Hi, this is Suzanne in Ohio. I have a little show and tell for you today. I wanted to re-show some of my fabric journal covers, especially this one because it's going out in the mail today. Um, I sold this on my Etsy site, and there's a few others on there, and soon to be a few more. But I want to go over this again because I took it a few stages further. And also, there was some interest in seeing the or knowing more about the process of putting them together. So let's start with this one. This journal cover has been constructed with quite a few vintage snippets. See if I can get this all in frame. And if you can't decipher it from maybe my video, I'll point these out. Very old vintage laces, tatting, a linen dresser scarf, another edging with the original, or I mean another linen dresser scarf with the original crocheted edge on it. And all these are laid down and then a lot of slow stitch on top of them. So let's move on over here. You can see the old pieces behind it, which makes a beautiful background. And then I just add the embellishments with slow stitch embroidery or running stitches or whatever. The main feature on this one is this ribbon embroidery. I have been practicing ribbon embroidery. I'm not an expert, so if any of you are out there, oh, please forgive me for anything that doesn't look quite right to you. But I'm just teaching myself by watching YouTube videos. I'm fascinated by those girls. I don't know where they come from because I can't speak their language, but man, are they experts. So this little ribbon embroidery is a cluster of roses, some little tiny things here, a main rose, two rose buds, um, a few leaves, some eyelash yarn to give it some texture, and a bow. And then off of the bottom, I created a little stuffed heart, and it is just lightly stitched on there and can be snipped and taken off if you want to. And then it has a few beads dangling. So I thought this journal cover would be perfect for just shabby chic, romantic, a wedding book, could possibly even be a little girl's baby book. Who knows, whatever someone wants to use it for, or just simply a journal. So when I created these fabric covers, I included these signature covers if you'd want to use them. I chose the colors I thought would go appropriate with each individual one. But it is just the signature cover, and it's fashioned in a folder style with little pockets at the bottom. And I think all of them are two-sided. Yeah. And then you could switch those out, use them or not use them, whatever suits whatever you're doing with it. Now, each of these journal covers come with some basted thread lines where you could possibly use as guidelines to sew in your signatures, if that's the style you want to make. However, you could take this entire fabric piece and make something else out of it. It could end up to be a bag or an envelope or whatever you'd want to do with it. So this little jewel is going out to a happy home, and that one's leaving me today. I really enjoyed doing this one, really enjoyed it. So I want to show you a few others and some that are incomplete so that you can see the put together process if that interests you. I have 4 more that are complete, and I'll just show them quick because I showed them in another video, and you can go back and search that if you want to. But this one brings up, and let's see, 2 or 3 of these bring up the subject of this original featured cluster right here. This is actually a puffy. I call them my puffies. I didn't know what else to call them. It's a collage of fabric and snippets that I create, and sometimes I make them as little hanging elements, and you can see the little ribbon loop on there that would have allowed you to hang it up on a wall or your backboard or whatever. But the feature item is the puffy, and it is mounted on, this was pretty much a plain piece of fabric here. On the back, the front was printed. You can see the print there, but this was plain pink, and then I overlaid a lace on it, stitched around the lace, and snipped away the excess, and then added all of this slow stitching. So that's how that one looks. And again, quick because I've already showed it. That was the lining I chose for that one. And of course, the lace forms a pocket on all 3 different panels. I'm wondering if I should back you out here just a little bit. Maybe so. So that has a little piece of ephemera in it. But there's the fabric, or the journal covers, signature covers that I chose for that one. Again, you can use them or not use them, whatever the case might be. So that's one there. And then here's another one. And this one, I attached a puffy onto that, but I left it open at the top as a pocket. So it's got a little tag sticking out there. And this one was created, the feature is the puffy. I added a large section of a curtain lace, or I think that was actually a tablecloth, and I stained the edges of it with my Inktense pencils. So many things you can do with fabric and adding color. You can add color to fabric with Inktense or plain old acrylic paint watered down. You can put flow medium in it if you're worried about it getting too stiff. Or if it's a flat surface fabric, you can color it with crayons, and some colored pencils with a solvent even works on it. So much for that lesson. So that is just backed off a piece of gauze, stained gauze, and on a solid white fabric with laces added to the edge. So you can see that just curls around. That makes the lip. Because these are wraparound journal covers, I want them to be expandable or to be able to be used in some other fashion if someone wanted to. So we're going to talk about these little puffies more in just a minute. But here's the inside, the fabric that I chose for the lining and the lace pockets. And then here's the 3 signature covers that I chose for this one. And then each journal cover comes with a choice of 2 or 3 different closures, at least 2, 3 if I think I have something that really would look nice. I'll just send it along and you can tie it up with whatever you want. So one more with a puffy on the front of it. So this one, this is more of, I don't know, old world, almost bohemian type look. I just absolutely loved this upholstery fabric, and I wanted to use it. It shows well on the back, so I didn't put anything else on it. But on the front, I used this little puffy. Now, these puffies that I've shown you so far are images printed on fabric. So that one, and that one. And I have done them before with just images on paper, cardstock or whatever you're using. I use presentation paper, some heavy, some light. So these little images printed off on fabric, and or it's on a transfer actually, and then you iron it onto your fabric. And I have a little hint about that. If you're ironing anything onto fabric, do a test before you iron things on. I had to remind myself that anything with a rayon or too much polyester in it might shrink as the iron goes over it. And so I ruined several transfers by not remembering that. So take a snippet of your fabric and measure it and iron it, and then if it shrinks at all, or sometimes you can see it shrinking right under the edge of your iron, don't use it. Just thin, tight woven cotton is best. There's a higher quality of quilting muslin that I like to use, and it's white, although it does come in cream also, but it has to be a high quality so the thread count is high. That gives you a tight, smooth surface, and then things iron off onto it really nice. So this is an elaborate cluster on this one, and if I can draw your attention to it, this is the puffy, and then all these other things are added on as I sewed the puffy onto the upholstery fabric. So if you look under here, the first layer you can see is a tablecloth lace, and I stained along the edge with ink tints. Here's some tulle. Here's some beautiful gold edged. This would be organdy or organza, whichever way you pronounce it. One of these elaborate brocade ribbon. I just put a little piece there, and the beads that match, and then of course a rolled flower, and some of my rolled flowers have eyelash trim incorporated right in them. And then just some little fibers, little loops of ribbon hanging down, and up here just a snippet that picked up the color scheme, a vintage metal button. And there you have it, a beautiful collage. You can think of it as, like I said, Bohemian or Old World. On the inside of this one, I chose a large toile print because it is so Old World looking, I believe, and I love those French toile things. This is not an elaborate original French toile, but it serves purpose very nice. And the fabric pocket goes all the way across. And because of the purple and other colors, this is what I chose for the signature covers on the inside of this one. So let's move that out of the way. Now I have another one. The rest of these are in various states of completion, and I wanted you to see how the process works. So this one is, I'll say, 80% complete, and it was created with fabric snippets. There you can almost see all of it. And I had to decide what my color scheme was from get-go, so I didn't get hodgepodge and muck it up. But this is a curtain lace panel cutout, and I accented the edges with ink tints, and then embroidery, just a running stitch embroidery to define the shapes. And then all of these curlicues are slow stitching in, just a running stitch. So this one needs something else. I'm not sure what, but I haven't finished it off yet because I need to decide. So to help me explore some ideas, you kind of audition different things and showcase different ideas. But I'll probably sew some beads on the front of this, little clusters of beads, maybe with just some little sparse snippets of eyelash yarn. And that might be it. This one would lend itself to some streaming ribbons and different things, whatever you can think to do. Now, I haven't chosen the signature covers for this one yet, but you can see this is kind of a cottage rose kind of shabby chic kind of motif. So you could do with it whatever you were inspired to do. So that one did not have a puffy on the front of it. This is the feature, but it needs a little bit more, something to make a puff. So that's where that one is. That's what stage that one's at. And I don't believe I showed this one before, but in just a minute, I'm going to show you the process of how I lay down the foundations and things. Now, this one, I know I did not show it. And here's what it looks like when I'm still kind of thinking about it. So what I did here was the ribbon embroidery, some leaves, some little buds out of ribbon, and then the slow stitching just to form some curlicues, sticky outy kind of things, I call them. And then I'm just now beginning to play with the finishing off ideas. So there's a little fringe of tassels here along the side, and that makes this one look very old world too. And then I had some of this, again, this gorgeous brocade ribbon, and I've already attached one little piece here, and my idea is that I will probably, now here's how I work with it, I'll probably attach a loop right there. Let me see if I can get my hand out of the way so you can visualize how that would look. I'll probably attach a loop there, and then I found this really nice pin at my thrift store, and it has the right colors to it. So I might attach that brooch pin right on top of that. Now, after I make this loop and attach it there, this is the only thing you'll see right here. I'll probably put a little cluster of gauze or something right underneath this pin to kind of make the pin stand out as an element. So that's just my thoughts so far for this one. So the whole idea here is you can see how it goes through the developing stages. And again, in just a minute, I'm going to show you how I actually start. But just a word here about this ribbon embroidery. There's all kind of ways you can do it according to the instructions I've been watching, but I want to do it on something soft and flexible. So I put gauze. Actually, it isn't gauze. Please excuse me. I was gifted a huge roll of whatever this fiber is. This it's almost like a netty nylon type fabric. I was even wondering if it was made for screen printing. I don't know, but I probably had 200 yards of it on a roll. Now it was only about 36 inches wide, but I have used that for so many things. So I put a double layer of that in my embroidery hoop, and that's what I embroidered the roses onto. So when I cut it out of the loop, I fringed the edges, and then I laid it on a cluster of, you can see there's gauze here, and then tulle, gold tulle, and then some lace. And that just nestled it right in there. So here's how it looks before you put the lining on. Now I don't know if you can see all these stitches, but you can see the back side of all my slow stitching on here. And then this will have a lining on it, and then another piece of lace as a pocket. So that's how you would go about it, and that's my ideas for that one. Now let's move on to some others that aren't completed yet at all, and I'll show you the process. So this one, again, vintage linen snippets, and I freehand embroidered this branch here, and it's my thought that these will have either little ribbon flowers at the tips or some glass beads. I'm not sure, but I'll incorporate something in there. And then here's the back side of that one. Loved all these old embroidery things, and especially this. Here's some pink linen, and it had a beautiful crocheted edge on it. Here's one of those old nylon dresser scarves that were so popular in the 50s and 60s. So not everything's cotton or linen, but if it's got some interest to it, you can use it. This was one of those, it's called cut work embroidery. It was embroidered flower and branches of leaves on the edge of a dresser scarf. And when I put it down, the only thing I did to enhance it a little bit was do a running stitch around the petals on that to make it pop a little bit. Okay, so here's the construction. I've chosen this is going to be the liner, but here's what everything looks like before you get around to that. And this is, and I have another one I can show you where my backing isn't sewed down yet. But I didn't have a piece of muslin wide enough right at hand, so I used 2 strips, just overlapped them a little bit, and then that made my backing. And here's the back side of all my slow stitching running work. So let's put the liner back in that so I don't forget that. So I hope you have ideas already about how you might finish that off. And then let's see, there's 2 more. Now this one is going to be a farm style cover for a journal. So let me first show you what the front side's looking like. It's very busy and very country looking. And I wanted to use some of these things because I thought they just lent themselves perfect. So we have a novelty print here, cherries, a little bit of lace, dresser scarf embroidery, novelty print, and I created that as a little pocket. And then right here are 3 different pieces of a Dresden plate unfinished quilt. I was fortunate enough to find these very, very old, I'd say 1920s pieces at an Amish relief sale, and I just loved them. And I bought the whole little bag, I think for $7, and it was all unfinished Dresden pieces. So I'm using them sparingly, but I'm using them. Okay, so on this side, same thing, some of the Dresden plate pieces, another rooster, a piece of French toile, and all this embroidery with lace and slow stitching. Now, the slow stitching on this one is only half done. You can see that this piece isn't even stitched down yet. Neither is the edge of these cherries. So you just work at it until you know you've secured everything and perhaps added accents wherever you wanted to. So that's how I go about it. So I'll be adding stitches everywhere, probably that something joins itself, and make sure all the edges are down. And then if it needs anything else as an accent, then I'll think about that. Okay, on this side, let's see, I've only done a little bit of slow stitching here. The Dresdens, I didn't want to add slow stitching on top of them. It takes away from them. So they're stitched down with quilting thread. And I purposely left the original basting stitches in here from whatever lady was working on this quilt. It just adds so much history. I think about her running her little basting stitch across there. She would have taken those out after she applied the Dresden pieces on top of the quilt, because how you make a Dresden plate is sewing these pieces together as a complete circle, and then you lay them down on top of your quilt almost like an applique, and then stitch around the edges. So that's how that one goes. Now I think this one, yes, I'm able to show you more about putting it together on this one. I've chose this chicken wire print for the lining and just a strip of an old dresser scarf with cut work on it. That will be the pocket. And then let me show you how things go together. This is a good one to use as an example because this is just laying on here. And all the slow stitching has not been done yet. So the first thing I start out with is just something for a foundation. It's almost always muslin or something very thin and cotton. And I make sure that it's squared off the size that I want it. I do a lot of tearing because that'll keep you in the grain of the fabric, and then you can do whatever you want from there. So this one, now maybe I spoke wrong. All right, can you see the light blue grid lines under there? Those light blue grid lines are on the foundation, or some of them. Actually, it's interfacing, real lightweight interfacing. I'm using what I have, and if it's not quite thick enough, I double it up. And I'll talk to you about what you can use on the inside in just a minute. But the first thing I did was probably very loosely based the interfacing, and then I basted all my regular pieces onto that. So you're laying down your muslin, you're laying down your interfacing, you're laying down your big background pieces, and then you can either hand baste or I use spray baste a lot. Spray baste comes in a can. It's a very soft, removable adhesive used for quilters. And the thing about it is, after time, it evaporates and just goes away. So it's a wonderful application for a lot of things. So the base pieces are put down, and then I start deciding what my little elements are going to be. Then everything is hand stitched or machine stitched if you want through all these layers. So if I'm hand stitching, I usually do that first. If there's any place I feel like machine stitching works better, I go ahead and do that. And there you have it. So the embellishments that you put on top of this, if I'm doing something I feel like I need to go through all the layers, I do it before I add the lining. But if not, like the other one that I showed you, like this one, I'll probably sew the beads on before the lining, but it's not necessary because all you'd have to do is loop through about 2 layers of fabric and sew your beads on. You can do it any way you want. Now I threw these here just to show you what I might consider. This might help you make ideas or come up with ideas. So I originally thought this piece of cut work might make a good pocket, but then because it's a farm style, I thought, man, I've got these other things here too. This could possibly be a pocket. This is a crazy quilt piece done all in light pink flowers, very farmy looking because it's a patchwork style. And I could split this right down the middle and get enough of a strip to make a pocket all the way across. Now, because some of these fabrics are loosey-goosey on the edge, I might put a piece of seam binding or something on the back side of that just to strengthen that edge as the pocket. So that's another possibility. And another possibility would be ticking. Very country, very farm style, and just lends itself to the look of the whole thing. So I'll be thinking on that, and I piled these in here to show you, and then maybe it helps you with your own process of determining what to do. So here's my last one, and this is even in a lesser state of completion. And again, this is a puffy. The image was printed on transfer and then ironed onto the fabric. And I knew I wanted this one to be kind of romantic, bohemian, so that's what I've set out to do. I used an old piece of linen and it had this beautiful tatting edge on it, and I embroidered just a sprawly bunch of flowers, and that has become part of my elements. But let me first show you the basic big piece of fabric, this gorgeous fuchsia colored, almost fuchsia colored um, cottage roses, I guess. Just love the fabric. Now, I don't know if you can see on your screen or not, but some of these leaves are blue-green and some of them are true green. And so I try to pick up those colors in everything that I've put on here. Now, I've just barely began to pin things on. This says no slow stitching on the top, except, oh yes, I did. I started right here with this dark piece of teal colored. This was some of my polymer dyed laces, and that went well. I needed to pick up this blue-green color in the image, so I put that on there. And just a note for those of you that, you know, I don't want to insult anybody. You might know, I'm sure many of you know far more than I do, but for those that don't or are interested, anytime you can repeat your colors, it helps pull the cohesiveness of your composition together. So this was such a different color than is over here in the fabric, so I added a piece to help the eye and the brain incorporate it all as one. So on the inside of this one, here's where you probably get a better look at what's going on. Now, I'm going to pull, and you can see it's kind of stuck, but it's not sticky, not at all. But I spray basted this Pellon, this very light interfacing Pellon. I spray basted it to actually to the muslin first, and then laid this on top. So you can see it's basted, sprayed on both sides. Now, if I felt like I had a slippery fabric and I really wanted to, I might hand baste around the edge just to keep everything in place, because the more you roll something, handle it, twist it, turn it to do all your slow stitching, the more likely it is to come out of kilter. But on a junk journal, what does it matter? The more interest it has, the better. Now, I've laid this piece in here because I thought this probably might be my lining for this. I know it's very strong, but it sure goes with the fabric of the roses, so I might do that. And if not, I'll choose something else lighter that incorporates the colors. But this could also be the pocket, some more of the roses, or some lace, whatever you choose to do. Okay, so I hope that this all helps you, somebody with their slow stitching. Let me see if I have anything else to show you. I know I do. Can you hold on just a minute? I wanted to show you a little bit more about the puffies. Coming. So the wonderful thing about puffies are that you can do them when you're in the mood to work on something smaller. And once you have them ready, they can serve a myriad of uses. So let me show you some other puffies. And these are three large ones that I made, I think last spring, not this past, but the previous. And what I was working with was this rose hip image, and it was on transfer, and I ironed it onto fabric. So I left these at different stages of completion. This was the first stage. What I did was lay the puffy down. It has a piece of batting under it. That's why it's puffy. That's why I call it a puffy. And then I began to build around it. Now, some of these things are underneath the whole thing. Others are just sticking out the edge. And this was put together just on the sewing machine. So let me show you here. So once I had it in place, and probably I used some spray batting. If not, I used like that generic brand of Wonder Under. You can see my batting sticking out here. Here's a piece of taffeta. here's a piece of organdy, and there's some curtain lace and my foundation. And so all I had to do to keep it in place is I went here and then a square. Of course, I did it from the front so that I could remember where I went. Now these little things are glued on here as of right now. You can see I can pull it off because it's not complete yet, and I probably would have added slow stitching to hold that down. And then my idea was some kind of little cluster here, probably of roses or loose ribbon, who knows, anything you want to do. Now this one's virtually the same thing, only I took it a step further. And on this one, my embellishments are paper. These are printouts, image printouts, and probably cardstock. I don't even think I had any presentation paper back at that time. But I put these little images on here because they were all roses, and I was really doing a lot of rose things at the time. So this one is sewn on as a pocket and has two little pieces of ephemera sticking out of it. And then this little saying, they will return, meaning the roses will be back. Hand fan image and little bird. And you can see what I've done here. I use whatever's in my box sitting beside me because you can always make something work. And I had a piece of tulle. I don't even think you can see it, but I tied a bow in it every so often and then stitched it on. Some eyelash yarn. And then I did finish the back of this one, and what I typically do is put a lining on it, but I leave it open on one side as a pocket, and that comes in very handy. I put in some pieces of ephemera in this little pocket, and this one would definitely have gotten a loop up here to hang it. If that's what you wanted to do with it, you could. But this one would be very appropriate for the front of a journal. So all you would do is glue this down, fabric tack, and glue it down onto whatever journal front you were working on. And voila, you are ready to go. If you don't like the idea of gluing it down, you can put it down with invisible hand stitching along here. And then you've got your main feature for your journal cover as well as a hidden pocket. You can have something coming out of there. And then this one, this puffy, this was, sorry about the glare, same thing, an image printed on fabric. This was one of my watercolors. I was working on spring items, and some of these are small shrunken down images of my watercolors. And then a famous quote from Tolstoy, spring is the time of plans and projects, and then a little vintage piece of ephemera there. And that little puffy is whatever I want it to be. It can be a gift pocket. I can put a loop on it for hanging, or I can mount it on the front of a journal, or it can actually hold a tiny journal or some ephemera in the back. And that's what I put on there. Let's see, what did I do? Oh, I found, yeah, I put these two in, especially because they were ivy, and the main feature here is ivy. So those go in that back pocket back there. Now, as for the puffies, let me show you some that are in different degrees of being worked on. Get all this plastic out of the way. And I keep these ongoing, and I don't worry about how fast I'm finishing them because I know they're laying there, and if I'm going to need one with one of these images on it, I know I have it almost ready. So here's one that I haven't done anything to. I showed this in another video when I was talking about Inktense pencils, Inktense pencils. This is done with Inktense, and it's just a simple pair. And I didn't think I would make anything out of it, so I even painted it on a piece of fabric that had some pencil marks on it. And I thought, oh, it doesn't matter because I'm going to edge it around and make it into a puffy and probably add some pear leaves to it. And again, here's the process. a piece of muslin. And you can see here that I used up my scraps of batting because they weren't all the right size. That's how I use up my scraps. And then this is spray basted, and then it's ready to go. It's going to stay together until I get ready to do something with it. This would have been beautiful in a fall journal. I could finish this off simply and it could be a fabric flip, or I can finish it off elaborately and it can be the front of a small journal. So that gives you any ideas. So that's one bare bones right there. And you can see I made a little note for myself, needs stitched. I had a whole stack of them that need stitched. And I keep this stuff right by my couch, so if I'm sitting there watching TV, I've got something to work on. This one's pretty well done except for the backing. So you can see what it was. This was an image off of a Susan Wingett piece of fabric, and I wanted to feature these little birds, which you can see I have several. And I love her artwork, and I just saved these out of my scraps. I wouldn't throw these little birds away. I got to do something with them. So border them around with snippets of fabric and lace, do a little slow stitching on them. This is slow stitched onto here, and it's enough to hold it together. Now I can back this and make a puffy pocket out of it, or I can just leave it as is and sew it right on something that will be in a journal or a gift envelope or anything. And then this one is a little bit more delicate because I put this sticky outy lace, and I believe all of them need some beads on them somewhere. This one, I superimpose these little embroidery flowers in the foreground, and you can see there's some places like right along here that need some slow stitching. Even if I make it a feature or if I hide it, it doesn't matter as long as I stitch that piece of fabric down to the other one. All the rest of the sides are done. And that one, oh, I did put a backing on that one. Dark green glitter fabric. Same thing here. And then just here's some others to give you ideas. Okay, this one I was making something out of this fabric, and I couldn't bear to throw that chicken away. So it's bordered off here. And same thing here. Piece of embroidery thread. Just begin to add some ideas here. Don't know how I'll finish this one off, but these two chickadees are just so cute. And again, if you want to see the construction, there it is. Now in this one, I'm glad I opened this because somebody gave me a huge roll of just white felt. Not real felt, not wool felt, but you know, kids craft felt. And that makes something wonderful. It acts just like batting, and your needle goes through it real easy. And that's what I used. That'll be the puffy part of that. Haven't even added anything else here. I thought, now I could either take this sort of Christmassy by adding red, or I could leave it very fall, pardon me, by just leaving it in the neutrals. So I don't know yet. That's the fun of it. And then another, supposed to be a black cap chickadee. This was from a different fabric. You can see a different fabric. And so this one had red berries in the background. And that's how they get started. Now this one could be a lovely Christmas piece, and I probably will turn it into that. And maybe not, in my mind, it could be Christmas or just plain old winter. It doesn't matter. But I'll probably embroidery a tiny little sprig here and put some red glass beads on it as if it's berries. Now, I want to mention this. This piece of backing that I used right here is a piece of an old sheet. I will change that because if you don't get a sheet that's old enough, the thread count is so high that it's a hard time for your needle to go through when you're doing hand stitching. Machine stitching, no problem. Now let's talk about that for just a second. I have a bunch of straight lines here. I could put this on the machine and just get that much done with the machine. And then come back with hand stitching to add some lace pieces or some embellishments. So whatever suits you best. But I spend a lot of time on the couch and I like to have something to hand stitch on. And you can't imagine how many things you can end up with after 2 or 3 days of sitting in front of the TV in the evening. Another little Susan Wingett bird, and I'm not happy with this border. So probably I'll change that. It just didn't make it pop or bring out the colors as much as I wanted to. I thought about switching all this to brown prints. And then here's just a pile of junk you can see I had laying in my bag. So what you have here is the puffies, basically, and the fabric journal covers that can be turned into anything you want. So if you love hand stitching or you just need something at a little slower pace for certain parts of the day, think about this process. And I thank you for watching, and thank you for my subscribers. I haven't had enough opportunity to spend a lot of time on my YouTube channel over the last year because of health issues, but I'm hoping to get back at it starting here late fall 2019. And so for those that have subscribed, I thank you very much. I'm getting close to 300 subscribers, which is minuscule compared to a lot of other channels, but I appreciate every single person, and I'll be doing a giveaway soon. So thank you for watching. Please come back again. And if you have not subscribed and you're finding this by accident, please subscribe and give a like, and we'll see what happens with my channel. All right, thank you very much. Come again.